Author Michael Wolff has claimed in a lawsuit that First Lady Melania Trump threatened to sue him for over $1 billion in damages if he didn't retract Jeffrey Epstein-related statements he made about her. Wolff said in the lawsuit that Melania Trump's threat to sue came over statements he made to the Daily Beast and in 3 videos published on social media, although he added some statements were incomplete phrases and were taken out of context. The lawsuit came on Tuesday, the deadline set by Melania Trump's lawyer for Wolff to retract statements, issue an apology, and pay damages to his client. Through his lawsuit, Wolff announced his intention to use the legal action to put the president and his wife under oath to answer questions about Epstein. Wolff conducted interviews with Epstein before his death. The lawsuit noted that Wolff never said Melania Trump was involved in any of Epstein's crimes. Among the statements the lawsuit said were true were those saying Melania Trump was very involved in Epstein's social circle where she met her future husband, and that it was fair to question how Melania Trump fits into the Epstein story. Wolff has published a dozen books, including 4 bestsellers about the president.
Listen, I've been watching these clowns in Washington for over 20 years, and one pattern never fails. When the Trumps feel cornered, their first instinct is never transparency. It's always litigation. Michael Wolff didn't just expose facts. He threatened to drag both this fake-tan president and his plastic first lady under oath. And now a genuine FBI document has exploded in the middle of that very lawsuit, proving the Epstein connection Melania has fought for years and millions trying to bury that dirty little secret. As former federal prosecutor Joyce Vance said just days ago, this isn't a simple defamation suit, it's a masterclass in weaponizing the legal system as both shield and sword. Let me show you exactly how this lawsuit started and why she's panicking so hard.
Melania is a key part of the puzzle. What happened with Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump, Melania sheds an enormous amount of light. I got a letter saying you gotta talk about Melania and Trump. Before they could sue me for $1 billion, we went into court and sued them. We filed that suit on October 22nd, and that's almost 10 weeks ago. One of the things that we have been trying to do is to serve the First Lady. Turns out to be very difficult. They're basically hiding. They don't want this to go forward because they've kind of screwed themselves. I file suit, that means I can subpoena them. That means I can ask Melania Trump, Donald Trump, all of their friends, basically anything I want.
Let me read you the exact words straight from that FBI document. The agent wrote in black and white, Jeffrey Epstein personally introduced Melania Trump to Donald Trump. Not some vague social overlap. Not a random party. Epstein himself made the introduction. This is the same First Lady who stood at the White House podium, looked America in the eye, and swore under the presidential seal that Epstein didn't introduce her, that she barely even knew the guy. Meanwhile, her fake-tanned husband was flying around with Epstein for years, calling him a terrific guy.
I never been friends with Epstein. Donald and I were invited to the same parties as Epstein from time to time, since overlapping in social circles is common in New York City and Palm Beach. To be clear, I never had a relationship with Epstein or his accomplice, Maxwell.
That theatrical denial, delivered from the White House podium like a cheap reality show performance, just got obliterated by a cold, bureaucratic FBI document that flat out calls her a liar. She looked straight into the camera and swore she barely knew Epstein, never had any relationship with him or Maxwell. Bullshit. The federal record proves Epstein himself introduced her to her fake-tanned husband.
My email reply to Maxwell cannot be categorized as anything more than casual correspondence. My polite reply to her email doesn't amount to anything more than a trivial note.
Straight into the heart of Melania's dirty little secrets. She wants us to believe her email replies to Ghislaine Maxwell were nothing more than casual correspondence, just a polite little tribal note between socialites. Give me a break. What exactly is she so determined to protect? And why does this family always respond the same way, with billion-dollar legal threats and aggressive lawyering, the moment anyone gets too close to the Epstein chapter? Michael Wolff is no reckless blogger chasing clicks. He's the guy who wrote Fire and Fury, the man who's been inside Trump's chaotic world for years. He applies the same forensic approach here. That's exactly why they're terrified of him. These people don't defend the truth. They try to financially destroy anyone who dares challenge their fake narrative. And right now, that strategy is backfiring spectacularly.
Now, they've threatened and sued other people for related statements about Melania Trump's relationship with Epstein. These are called slap suits. They may have no hope whatsoever of proving defamation, but these suits are filed anyway.
After everything we've seen, what strikes me most isn't the scandal itself. It's what this fight reveals about how raw power actually operates in America today. Michael Wolff isn't fighting a simple defamation case. He's challenging an entire system of elite impunity that the Trump family has mastered better than almost anyone else in modern politics. This is a family that has turned legal intimidation into an art form, and they've gotten away with it for years because most targets eventually fold under the financial and psychological pressure. But here's the deeper truth most commentators are missing. This lawsuit isn't really about Melania's reputation. It's about control of the narrative as they prepare for whatever comes next in American politics. Every threat, every delay tactic, every attempt to move the case to a friendlier venue in Florida isn't just defense. It's an aggressive assertion that they, and only they, get to decide what truth is. Think about the sheer arrogance. The First Lady of the United States, surrounded by the full machinery of the federal government and protected by Secret Service at all times, claims she couldn't be located for service of process. That's not a legal strategy. That's open contempt for the rule of law. It sends a chilling message to every journalist in the country. If we can do this to someone as prominent as Wolff, imagine what we can do to you.
So it is now Michael Wolff versus Melania Trump. I'm not the only one who has faced these kinds of lawsuits. This has just become their trick in the book. We don't want this discussion to go on. How do we stop it? We threaten people with lawsuits for billions of dollars. So instead of acquiescing, my lawyers went into court and sued the First Lady. What we are suing for, the New York State, there are a set of laws, they're called anti-slap laws, because hers is the threat of a slap lawsuit. Suing me for defamation in a situation where there is patently no defamation, but suing so that I will shut up. So instead, in a turning of the tables, a jujitsu move about what someone in the White House said to me this morning, well, no one saw that coming. We have sued the First Lady. The importance of that is that it gives me subpoena power. I can subpoena the First Lady, her husband, the president, and anyone else who might shed light on the relationship of Donald Trump and Melania Trump to Jeffrey Epstein. This might be a way to actually get to the bottom of this story, to open the curtain, the dark curtain, and we'll see how they feel about that.
What fascinates me as someone who studied political power for decades is the internal dynamic this has exposed. You have a First Lady who built her entire public brand on elegance, distance, and quiet dignity, now forced into the mud because of the very world her husband dragged her into. The Trump marriage has always been transactional, but this Epstein mess is forcing the transaction into the open. She's not just protecting herself. She's trying to survive the consequences of his decades-long addiction to being seen with the richest, most depraved people in the room. And let's be honest about Donald Trump's role here. This is the same man who once described Epstein as someone who liked beautiful women on the younger side, just like him. The same man whose own words and actions created the toxic environment that Melania is now desperately trying to distance herself from. Yet instead of owning any of it, the strategy remains the same. Attack, deny, threaten, repeat. Classic Trump. Always someone else's fault, never his. Legal experts I've spoken with off the record describe Melania's legal team's behavior as high-risk, high-reward forum shopping on steroids. They're not looking for justice. They're looking for the weakest, most ideologically aligned judge they can find. That's not how a confident party litigates. That's how a guilty party plays for time, hoping the public loses interest and the journalist runs out of cash. The real danger for them now isn't even the current FBI document. It's what comes next. Because once discovery begins in earnest, Wolff will have the power to subpoena not just documents, but witnesses, flight logs, phone records, financial transactions, and the full architecture of their social world in the late 90s and early 2000s. That's the nightmare scenario they're fighting so desperately to prevent, the one where real sunlight finally hits the details they've spent years airbrushing out of history. Mark my words, if this case survives the next few procedural hurdles and discovery is allowed to proceed, we are going to witness one of the most explosive revelations in modern political history. Melania's carefully curated image will be shredded under oath. Donald Trump himself could be forced to testify about his decades-long relationship with Epstein. The flight logs, the parties, the phone calls, everything they've tried to bury will be dragged into the public record. This won't just damage their legacy, it will make re-election in 2028 nearly impossible and haunt the entire Trump family brand for generations. This case has become a litmus test for something much larger. Can extremely wealthy and powerful people still use America's court system as a personal weapon to silence inconvenient questions about their past? If they win through procedural manipulation rather than truth, it sets a terrible precedent for the rest of us. It tells every billionaire, every celebrity, every politician that the law is just another toy they can buy and bend. I've watched powerful families operate in this town for a long time. The Clintons had their own version of this playbook. The Bushes had theirs. But the Trumps have taken it to a new level, combining celebrity, media manipulation, raw financial aggression, and a complete disregard for norms in ways we've never quite seen before. They don't just play the game. They try to rewrite the rules while everyone else is still following them. Melania's press conference wasn't strength. It was fear dressed up in designer clothing and delivered with all the theatrical flair of a failing reality star. When you have to go on national television to deny something while your own lawsuit is actively pending, you're not winning. You're losing control of the story and showing the world exactly where the pressure points are. And that's the delicious irony here. The more they fight, the more attention they draw to the very questions they want buried. Every motion, every delay, every arrogant legal maneuver only convinces more people that there must be something worth hiding. Their panic is becoming self-fulfilling. Wolff understood something fundamental that most journalists miss. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do against bullies is simply refuse to be bullied. By refusing to back down, he's not just defending his own reporting. He's defending the principle that no one, not even a first lady wrapped in White House privilege, gets to rewrite reality through legal intimidation and endless procedural games. This is bigger than Melania. This is about whether we still live in a country where the truth can survive contact with unlimited money and political power. It's about whether the First Amendment still means something when it collides with billion-dollar threats from people who treat courts like their personal playground. The walls aren't just closing in on this one story. They're closing in on the entire myth the Trump family has spent decades constructing, and the myth of self-made success, perfect marriages, flawless judgment, and zero accountability. And no amount of threats, venue changes, or White House podium performances can stop that now. The American public deserves better than this endless cycle of denial, distraction, and intimidation. We deserve answers, real ones, under oath, with evidence on the table. Not carefully scripted fairy tales delivered from behind a presidential seal. And thanks to one journalist who refused to kneel, who looked at a billion-dollar threat and chose to fight instead, we might actually get them. That's the power of real journalism when it's backed by courage. This fight is far from over. In fact, it's only just beginning to get interesting. The next ruling on venue, on service, on anti-SLAPP protections could reshape not just this case, but how future powerful figures think twice before weaponizing the legal system. I predict that within the next 6 to 12 months, this lawsuit will either force a very expensive settlement with damaging admissions, or it will explode into full public discovery. And when that happens, the Trump empire's carefully guarded secrets will finally see the light of day. Stay with me. When the next major development hits, and trust me, it's coming sooner than they want, we'll tear it apart together. No filters, no fear, just raw, unsparing truth. See you in the next breakdown.